Grand Rising, loved ones. Welcome back to another episode of Healing Wisdom with me, your favorite spiritual advisor, Empress Oracle. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. First, before we get into the tea of what's really good, let's start off with our spiritual copyright disclaimer. On behalf of Starseed Galactic Federation, I have been given access to this knowledgeable information from my Akashic records for the purpose of helping humanity. This information is given directly to me as a divine channel, and any use and or reproduction of this information without proper accreditation or acknowledgement from which this information was received will result in instant karma for the plagiarizing parties or individual. And so it is. Now that we've gotten that out the way, today I would love to talk to you guys about the effects of binding yourself in a relationship. Yes, that's what I said. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The effects of binding yourself in a relationship. Because, back in the day, it used to be really taboo. People would bind themselves in a relationship, but they wouldn't really talk about it. But now that spirituality seems to be the next hot trend in the streets. You can go anywhere and everywhere and you see people talking about binding people, tying people to them like it's nothing, not really realizing how much they're fucking up, basically. So, first and foremost, let me start off by saying it is a spiritual offense to bind yourself to someone without their consent. That is akin to going against their free will, and in turn, you may end up with grievous consequences. Not just you, but that person as well. Okay, a spiritual offense. And although, a lot of us only think in the 3D, the physical plane, as far as the eye can see here on earth, it's deeper than that. There's levels to this shit. Okay? A spiritual offense can carry you through lifetimes and generations. Okay? A spiritual offense can not only damn you, but it can damn your children, your children's children. You can fuck up the whole path that you had for yourself by doing that. Don't be greedy, okay? The thing is, we have to let people have their free will and make their own conscious decisions. If you are a good person and if you are coming from a place of love with somebody else, they should not have a problem with being with you. If they don't want to be with you, that is fine. We have to learn how to let things go. People have a problem. People like to hold grudges and bind themselves to people. People, they feel like that person is the end-all, cure-all, and they want to take away people's free wills and bind themselves to people. But what you have to understand is not only are there other fish in the sea, but free will and true love always conquer all. Eventually, that person is going to snap out of it. All right. And you will have ended up doing more harm than good and damning your own soul. And then you're going to have to think about it. Is it really truly worth it? What if God has somebody else better planned for you, but because you couldn't see past what was in your face, you decide to bind yourself to somebody, and a few years down the line, you find out that shit's not even all what it was cracked up to be. It's not what you thought it was going to be. And you end up living here, hell on earth. And you put yourself in that hell. We have to stop doing that, people. And I can't even say y'all have to stop doing that, because me personally, I don't bind anybody to me, all right? If you do not want to be here, you can go. You can go. There are way too many fish in the sea, and I learned that at a very young age, all right? And something else that I also learned growing up is that when God removes somebody or something out of your life, he always, and when I say God, I mean spirit, source, divine, my Father. When he removes something or somebody out of your life and you trust him and you know that you gave that person your all from pure intentions and a place of love, he will always replace it with something or somebody even better. So why would you want to sell yourself short and just settle? All right. If that person chooses to move on, they were not for you. Most people in relationships in our life are to teach us lessons that either we did not learn in a past life or we need to learn in this lifetime in order for our soul's growth. And that's what is happening. People are inhibiting their own growth. People are sabotaging their own selves. And we have to stop doing that. Stop sabotaging yourself. Stop refusing to learn these lessons that these people are carefully placed into your life to teach you. Stop trying to hold on to that lesson, okay? Let yourself grow. Let that person grow. Take whatever it is you're supposed to take from that experience. Don't be bitter. If it doesn't work out, don't be bitter, because we never really take L's. It's either a lesson or a blessing. So you take that lesson and you move on so that the next relationship that you have, whether it is an intimate relationship, whether it's a friendship, a work relationship, all of those are relationships. So that the next time you can pour into that next relationship and you will not make those same mistakes. When you see those red flags, those warnings and stuff, you'll be better prepared because you will have learned your lesson. Stop stunting your own growth, people. It's not healthy and it's not okay. And I know a lot of cultures, they believe in tying people and binding people, especially in the South. And I can say that because I live in the South. I'm not from the South, but I live in the South. And people talk about binding and tying people like they talking about going and mixing up some Kool-Aid. That shit's crazy. If you bind someone to you, they are unable to honestly and purely learn that lesson. And in turn, you are willingly inhibiting or sabotaging their and your soul growth. So I've heard of 2 birds with 1 stone, but damn, a double homicide? Is that really what you're trying to do? A double homicide? You're shooting yourself in the foot. We have to stop doing that. We have to stop doing that. What we also need to understand is everybody's life path is already written out before they come down here to earth. Literally every single person that you come in contact with in your life, you have already signed a soul contract with that person to learn a certain lesson, or maybe to say, it could be one sentence. Sometimes you sign soul contracts to cross somebody in the supermarket and their face is down and you may say, keep your head up, beautiful. And that may be the words that they needed to save their life. But we have to understand, we sign soul contracts with people before we come down here. And a lot of times the relationships that we go through, especially when we're younger in life, those first loves that break our hearts and everything, those are contracts that we sign. And the thing is, how are you going to recover from that heartbreak? Are you going to let it hurt you? Are you going to let it inhibit you from ever finding true love? Or are you going to grow from that and heed the warning signs and the symptoms so that when you go into each other relationship, you don't make the same mistakes? It's a contract that you sign. People are getting caught up in these contracts. I feel like that's a part of the reason why there's so much debt in society as well. And when I say debt, I mean DEBT, because people love to tie themselves into contracts where they don't belong. Chew on that, right? But in turn, after you tie yourself or bind yourself to somebody, in turn, that ends up putting the soul in confusion, because subconsciously, the soul knows when it's not supposed to be somewhere. Your soul knows when it's time for you to move on. Your soul knows when it's time for growth. And that's why we'll get those soul nudges and those urges. And a lot of times, people, they don't really understand. Sometimes you see those people and they always looking restless. It's because their soul knows that wherever they are and whatever they're doing, they're not supposed to be there anymore. That ship has sailed. That time has passed. But because that person is not listening to their intuition and stuff, in turn, their soul gets confused and they get that state of restlessness and they really just don't know what to do, right? That's when the binding, okay, will manifest into the 3D in physical forms, right? When your soul knows that it's not supposed to be there, when it knows that that relationship is over, that lesson is learned, and you are still bound to that situation, whether you bound yourself to that situation or your significant other bound yourself to that situation, or you bound yourself to a job thinking you would get job security, but now you have learned everything that was supposed to be learned and you getting the most pay there, and you've outgrown it. You're not supposed to be there anymore, whatever it is, right? It will start manifesting in physical forms, such as mental, emotional, and physical abuse. I'm going to tell you, let me pause before I go ahead and list the rest of the things. I am going to tell you, I have seen so many people who suffer. I think 90% of people who bind themselves in relationship tend to suffer from mental, emotional, and physical abuse. That is the top indication that somebody bound themselves somewhere that they're not supposed to be, and their soul is just so fed up and they start lashing out physically. They start lashing out emotionally. They start being verbally abusive towards you because their soul is starting to harbor ill will and hate, because the soul knows that they're stuck there. It knows that it's not supposed to be there. It knows that. And therefore you start harboring resentment towards that person. Sometimes you ever see people in relationships and the woman is all clingy to the man, but the man's whole body language just tells you, like, I can't stand this bitch. Like, she's all up on him, like, my baby. And he's sitting there like, yeah. And he give it a side eye, like, and every time he's just like, man, I can't stand her. He's always complaining about her. But why are you with her, my guy? Why are you with her? Because she binds you to her. That is why. Desperate people do desperate things. And that's why you should always be careful. If you ever get with somebody who loves you more than they love themselves, that is a red flag, okay? Because I'm going to tell you, love conquers all. But if somebody does not love themselves appropriately, they will not love you appropriately. And in turn, they might try to bind you to them because they feel as though the love that you have to offer, they don't want you to give it to somebody else, even though they feel as though they're not worthy. And they're showing that they're not worthy by trying to bind you and inhibiting your own free will. Also, too, another way that it manifests is weight gain. A lot of men, this is not just for the women, this is for the men also. Men, because a lot of men are in denial that they have been bound in relationships, and they sit there and they have a wife or significant other, but yet they out there with Mary, Rashida, Nicole, Tasha, Tiffany, X, Y, and Z, but they still have that wife at home. The reason why you cannot leave, sir, is because she bound you to her. All right? Are you gaining weight? Did you always have a six-pack your whole life and now all of a sudden you look like you're 7 months pregnant, sir? You may have been bound. That is a top indication that a female or male has tried to bind you to them. You're going to start manifesting it in weight gain, all right? And sometimes also they will try to disguise that by overfeeding you so that you don't even realize that the reason why you're gaining that weight is because you're bound. You just think it's just because you're eating good. But really, whatever they put in that food is what is causing, it's manifesting physically in your stomach. And that also, too, is going to block your chakras as well. Depression. You ever seen somebody that's been in a relationship for 25 years, but they've been depressed for 24 of them motherfuckers, and it's like, why are you still there? I don't know. I love him. But you're so sad. Love is not supposed to hurt. Love is not supposed to make you depressed. Love is not supposed to have you moping around like you are Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It's not supposed to do that. Lack of self-worth. People who are bound in relationships, they tend to have a lack of self-worth. But that also comes from, in order to keep that person, besides doing whatever the fuck they did to bind that person to them, they also have to make that person feel as though they are not worthy enough for anything better. Right? So they start attacking their self-worth. They may start off joking with them, talking about, what's up, little ugly? You stupid. And then before you know it, it becomes a habit. They're habitually telling this person, you ain't shit. You ain't never gonna be shit. Nobody else is gonna want you, everything. They're attacking their self-worth. And every time, each verbal assault that they do, it chips away at that person's self-worth a little bit more, until even if the spell or curse or whatever were to wear off, they have no self-worth. So they're not even going to think that it's worth or they're worthy enough to move on or to find somebody else. And that is just so sad. So sad. No matter what, always think that you are the shit. You might not be somebody else's shit, but you're your shit. Always remember that. Unhealthy habits, too, are another way that it can manifest in the 3D when somebody has been bound. Because a lot of times, as I said, when people get bound into relationships, the soul, the subconscious starts getting uneasy and getting restless, and it will look into other things, especially to take their mind off of it, to take the pain away, to have their mind go somewhere else because they're unhappy where they are. So they might start doing different forms of escapism, such as drugs, alcohol, hell, they might even end up doing sexually risky things with that person out of force or choice or coercion. You never know. Anyway, all of those are unhealthy manifestations of the effects of being bound to a relationship. And a lot of times you'll see a lot of people, especially men, you'll see a lot of men. I'm just saying from my personal experience, okay? Yours may be different. Don't come at me. I'm just saying. But I see a lot of men who are bound into relationships, and therefore they end up becoming functioning alcoholics. They don't spend not 1 minute sober because it's just too much. Their reality, the unhappiness of the situation they're in, the unhappiness of who they're with. They're like, how did I get stuck with this person? I didn't expect my life to be here. That shit is too much for them to handle. So they rather just drink it away and use the alcohol and the drugs to numb the pain of their reality. And unfortunately, once that high wears off, or once they piss that alcohol out or whatever, they're right back. Okay, so then it becomes a destructive cycle over and over again. And all that is going to do is just tear them down and diminish their self-worth. Okay, and just diminish everything that they have inside of them, because they stop looking towards a way to free themselves, and they become captives not just to that binding, but also to the alcohol, the spirits, okay, the drugs and whatever else. And then it just becomes a destructive cycle, right? And that's not what we want. You can tell if you've been bound in a relationship if you really pay attention to the signs. I most definitely will say that. Now, I'm going to give you an example of myself personally where, okay, a lot of people have attempted to bind me in relationships, you know, and I'm not trying to say it, trying to be cocky or anything like that, but I have a lot to offer. I bring a lot to the table, and I'm not just talking about materially, because I have had to start over many a times. I'm not the richest, but I have a pure heart, and I give love the way that I expect to receive it. And a lot of times people are not used to that, but they become selfish and they want to keep it for themselves, even if they know that they are not pulling their part in a relationship. So I remember one time, my same criminal baby's father, he tried to bind me in the beginning of our relationship. And every time I would go around him, I would get sick. Every single time. And I don't mean just like a little fart here, a little throw up there. No, I would get sick to the point where I would have to go to the emergency room, and they could never figure out what was wrong with me. But when I was not around him, I would be fine. That was my intuition. That was my soul, my spirit telling me that something is wrong. And then I recall one time I went to his house to go get our baby, and I went into his bedroom, and he was not in the bedroom. I went into his bedroom. I'll never forget this. And I sat on his bed, and something told me to look underneath his pillow. I looked underneath his pillow, and he had a Bible, and I don't remember what verse it was on, but he had something in the Bible, right? And all of a sudden, because he was in the kitchen, and it was like he just remembered, like, oh shit. And he came running, and he's like, what are you doing? Don't touch that. And he grabbed it, and I was like, what is it? Because I started reading it, and it was like he had a piece of paper that had like some type of chant or something written on it, tucked into the Bible thing. And he was like, don't worry about it. Don't touch that. And I'm like, well, why are you tripping? But that sparked my intuition, because I knew something was not right. And from there, I just started paying attention to the signs more and more. And I was like, you know what? I got to go. All right. So sometimes you have to pay attention and heed the signs and free yourself, right? It may be hard, but it can be done. It may be harder to tell, because when you are bound, it's harder. Oh shit, I can't read my handwriting. It's harder to listen to your intuition, because in order to bind, the intuition must be suppressed. Therefore, the upper chakras tend to be blocked. And that is something I am going to tell you. When somebody is trying to bind you in anything against your own will, they're going to have to block your crown chakra, your third eye chakra, so that you don't see, so that you're not getting intuitive messages or downloads or even dreams or even thoughts of, hey, what's going on? And a lot of times, they might not even be able to successfully block it all the way. It's just, you get so used to not listening to your intuition, because as I said, we have the intuition and we have the ego. And a lot of times people confuse the two, and people will tend to ignore their intuition in favor of the ego, because the ego 9 times out of 10 is going to tell you what you want to hear or something along those lines, especially when you have been bound, right? If you have been bound, and if that person has been using verbal abuse, your ego is going to start telling you the same things. Okay, so your intuition may be telling you, girl, you need to get about this relationship. But your ego is going to say, but if I go, nobody else is going to want me. Oh, I'm too scared to go. I'm sure he's going to find me. Start putting those doubts in your head, and then you're going to stay right the fuck where you at. Bound. Right? A main indication of binding is if you are in an unharmonious relationship that you constantly try to break free from, but always seem to return whether you want to or not. Another example I can give you of that is my eldest daughter's father. When his other baby's mother bound him to her, they would always get into domestic altercations, and he would always try to leave, but he would always end up returning because she bound him. But once he really couldn't do that shit no more, Super Toxica went on ahead and did some extra stuff. But that's neither here nor there. That's not my business. So I'm going to stop talking about that. People use personal items, food, and sex to bind people mostly, but it also can be done with bodily fluids. Okay? Also bodily fluids. That's why you have to be careful, guys. When you're having sex with a female, if you use a condom, take the condom with you. All right? Don't trust the female to dispose of the condom, because females will use that semen. They will use those bodily fluids and they will tie your ass to them. All right? And she might have just been, you know what I'm saying? She might have just been a jump through. You know what I'm saying? You might have just been trying to slide through right quick. And next thing you know, you got this ugly ass baby mama that you stuck with, right? And you're like, how? How? You shouldn't have left that condom over there, my nigga. You shouldn't have left it. Pick up after yourself. Ladies, I know a lot of times, you know, you might think it's kinky, freaky, exciting. You know, if a guy's like, oh, I want to eat you on your period or whatever the fuck. First of all, that's nasty. But second of all, that is a way that you can bind yourself to somebody. So when you have this nigga in your bushes in the daytime with a flashlight and you sitting there trying to move on with Michael, but you can't because Bobby's wreaking havoc, just know you bound yourself to that man when you let him lick that cootie cat on the last day of the period before the shit cleared up fully. Okay, so don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right? Food. All right. Jamaicans, we have this saying sometimes where we say you're too wanga belly. Stop eating from everybody. That is the problem. We cannot eat from everybody. It is safer. Nowadays, it's safer for you to go out to a public establishment and buy some food from a stranger than to go to, you know what I'm saying, your slide's house and eat her spaghetti. Because people will put things in things to bind you and to tie you, right? And that's not what we want, because not only will they bind you and tie you, but those things, because they are foreign and they don't belong inside your body, they can eat you up from the inside out. They can cause illness. All of a sudden you have unexplained internal issues, digestional issues. It's because somebody has put something in your food, and your health will definitely denote if somebody has been feeding you things that are not supposed to be eaten or things that are supposed to bind you or tie you. You'll start getting sick. You will start getting sick. But a lot of times, because your intuition is blocked, you just brush it off like it's just a bug or it's just going to pass or something. No, that's your body telling you that something is not right. The less grounded and spiritually enlightened you are, the easier it is to bind you. Ooh, excuse me, y'all. Little burp. Yes. So that's why it's important to make sure that you are always grounded. You have to make sure, although a lot of us are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? I know the 5D is fun, the ethers are fun to visit and whatnot, but you have to make sure that physically here in the 3D, you remain grounded. You have to make sure that you're in touch with yourself. Make sure that you keep yourself balanced and your chakras aligned, so that when something that is not of the light or something, an energy that does not belong to you comes to you or overtakes you, you are aware of it and you know this does not belong to me, and therefore you are able to counter that, right? It's important for you to stay grounded. It's important for you to stay balanced. It's important for you to keep a relationship with your spirit guides and your ancestors, because a lot of times they will see things that you don't see. They will see what other people are doing to you, and they will try to tell you. You'll get different signs. You might start seeing synchronicities. You might start seeing bugs and different certain things that are trying to tell you that something is not right in your atmosphere. So it's important for you to make sure that you are spiritually grounded and you are focused on your highest good, so that you know when somebody tries to bind you or tie you to something that is not for you, you will know how to take care of yourself, right? Stay safe, guys. I feel as though I went on a bit. I'm sorry. I tried to keep it as short and sweet as possible, but hopefully that will help you to know. So pay attention to yourself. Ladies, if you've been in a relationship and you went from the baddest bitch on the block to Rasputia, you may want to look into that. But be safe, guys, and I love you.